Those who advocate for always bigger government and higher taxes, like a graduated income tax, a progressive income tax, and people pay different rates at different levels of income. The reason for that is they can divide the citizens into different groups and mug them one at a time.
Ready, set, showtime. Welcome to the Montana Majority Report. Quick, transparent, and informative. Get the inside scoop on policies, people, and decisions shaping our state, all in less time than it takes to pour your morning coffee. Stay tuned. Montana starts right here.
Hey, I'm Senator Greg Hertz from Polson, and I've been in the legislature since 2013. And my background is I'm a CPA, and I also own 5 grocery stores in Montana. I've been primarily involved in tax policy across the state of Montana. And today we have Grover Norquist with us, one of the foremost policy advisors on taxes across the United States. So Grover, if you just maybe introduce yourself a little bit and we can maybe get talking about tax policy.
Sure. I run Americans for Tax Reform, which was put together by President Reagan when we were passing tax reform at the national level. And then, of course, we work at the state and local level to move taxes as low as possible, to make them as transparent as possible. And we urge all candidates, whether they're congressmen, senators, presidents, state legislators, to sign the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which simply says, I'll oppose and vote against any tax increase.
Great. So what are some of the policy changes or advice you might recommend that we can do here in Montana?
Sure. What's happening across the 50 states is in those states that are pro-taxpayer, they're moving to a single rate tax on the income tax and then looking to take that down. So there are 23 states that have the income tax as a single rate. Some of them, 8 of them, it's 0, and the others are 2, 3, 4% flat rate, single rate. Everybody pays the same rate. That's an increase of about 7 in the last 5 years. So it's a growing movement to go to a single rate tax so everybody feels comfortable. They know exactly that their peers are paying the same amount and that somebody who makes twice as much is paying twice as much, but a single rate tax. And that's been the biggest one. And then a number of states, 10, have announced they're going to take their single rate and take it down to 0 over time. North Carolina's phasing out to 0. Kentucky is. West Virginia is. Arizona's announced that's their plan. About 10 states have said and begun the process of we're going to 0.
No, that's and those states that are going to 0, obviously they're a little different than Montana. We only have an income tax here and property taxes. Correct. Those states have a sales tax. The people of Montana have always opposed a sales tax. I mean, what are your thoughts on implementing a statewide sales tax?
If you don't have a sales tax, don't get one. If you don't have an income tax, don't get one. If you didn't have a property tax, don't go get one. If you have 2 taxes, the state will be more heavily taxed than if you have 1. New Hampshire has property taxes, not income taxes, not sales taxes, very low overall taxes. If you have 2 taxes, sales and property or income and property, your taxes are more likely to be a little bit higher than just the 1. But if you go to 3, it's Katie bar the door. Yeah. And so those states with 3 significant taxes, obviously many other little ones, have higher taxes than those that don't.
You know, I've really focused here lately in the last few sessions to get us to a flat tax. Mm-hmm. And some of the critics always on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, are always saying, they claim, well, the rich don't pay their fair share. Well, right here in Montana, the 1% of our taxpayers, which is about 6,000 people, pay 30% of our income tax.
Those who advocate for always bigger government and higher taxes, like a graduated income tax, a progressive income tax, and people pay different rates at different levels of income. The reason for that is they can divide the citizens into different groups and mug them one at a time. Today we're going to raise taxes on rich people, and tomorrow we come for you. That is what they've done in Washington. They say they're not going to raise taxes on lower income people, and yet somehow when the Democrats get the presidency, they raise taxes on lower income people, despite what they said. Easier if you simply say everybody pays the same rate. That's fair, and you can also police it easier. You can watch it and see what they're doing.
Yeah, that's great. So in 2021, I passed a bill that basically matched our standard deduction to the federal. So now people living in Montana have a $15,000 standard deduction or $30,000 if you're married. And it was unbelievable that not one single Democrat supported that bill, even though it was benefiting a vast majority of all Montanans and particularly low-income Montanans. But there again, they're just focusing on the top rate because we had brought that down a little bit also.
The modern Democratic Party, not the one of 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, but the modern Democratic Party is not interested in tax fairness. They're interested in tax maximization. They want as much taxes as possible. New Jersey, back in 1965, had property taxes, very much like New Hampshire today. No sales tax, no broad-based sales tax, no income tax, just property tax. And it was high, or people felt it was high. And they said we should fix it. And so the fix the Democrats said was, why don't we bring in a sales tax in addition to the property tax, and that'll make the property tax go down. Really, how? But that was the promise, that you have one tapeworm that's bothering your intestines, we're going to swallow a second tapeworm, and this will get better with two tapeworms. Well, they did that, and 10 years later, people looked and said, my goodness, we have a sales tax and a very high property tax. You know how to fix this? Add an income tax, third tapeworm. So New Jersey today has very high property taxes, high sales taxes, high income taxes, because instead of limiting the tax that's painful, which is what people should do with property taxes, put a cap on it. It can only grow a certain amount. Keep an eye on that from getting too big and too painful. If you add another tax to fix the first tax, you end up with more taxes, and it doesn't change the property tax at all over time.
That's a great analogy, the tapeworm story. And people really need to focus on that and look at that. So let's switch gears a little bit to property taxes. Mm-hmm. And property taxes, that's one of my policies that I've been working on for several sessions. It's difficult here in Montana, and I really like your idea of just an overall cap on how much your property tax bill can increase, because no matter what we seem to do, there's always a workaround by local governments and school districts, and they always figure out a way to raise your property taxes.
Yes. Our friends in Florida have a model that's worked well. They say, what is your some people say, the rate's the problem. Some people say the assessment's the problem. Actually, you multiply those two numbers times each other, that's what you pay. Okay. So if you fix one but not the other, you've kind of fixed nothing. What they did in Florida, similar to what was done in California, but better done in Florida, was what do you pay today? And that now can only increase at a maximum of 3% a year. Now, your town or city may decide not to go to 3%. They may take 1%, 2%. They may reduce it. But they can only bring it up 3% a year. And when you sell the house, that protection moves to the person you sold it to. So this keeps property taxes from growing rapidly in Florida, and it includes protection. If you sell your house to somebody from Ohio who's coming to spend the summer, that person also has the protection. Why is that important? Because when you sell your house, or either to somebody from out of state or to somebody in state, if by selling it, it goes up in price, you remove the protection of 3% and it goes way up. That's what they do in California. Then you can't sell the house for as much as you expected, and it damages the very person you're trying to protect. So that cap that travels with the home, the property, stops the property taxes from going up. The biggest failure is to, as Texas has done, and they're trying to get themselves out of this, the mayor would say, I need more money. I can't go to my voters because they don't think I'll spend it wisely. But if I can get the state capital to give me money, then I can say I cut the property tax from what I was planning to do to them. Okay, and then you can say you help cut the property tax. But as they found after 10 years in Texas, property tax didn't stay down. It grew, and they had all this other money they spent. And now they're trying to extricate themselves from having facilitated bigger and more expensive and highly bureaucratized government at the local level. They do pretty well in Florida, keeping the state budget from going crazy, but local government spending's gone crazy. And what would discipline them, don't raise my property taxes, fails to when they can get bailed out by the state. So the state of Texas has harmed the cities by giving the politicians extra money, and they have no discipline.
Yeah, and it's just very difficult when you look at property taxes, and I would agree with you, if once a state gets involved and starts subsidizing local property taxes, it just leads to higher taxes locally. The voters will continue to vote taxes in on themselves. And Montana's kind of unique. I mean, if I take a $500,000 home in Flathead County and compare it to a $500,000 home in Missoula County, that home in Missoula County is paying almost twice the amount of the Flathead County home. And that's because of what their local governments are doing, what voters are approving, and how they're impacting their own individual taxes. So we have a lot of proposals here on property taxes. One of them has to do with people want to take income tax dollars and give a tax credit based on a person's income level on their property taxes. So is that a good idea at all?
No, it's a very bad idea because it masks the true cost of local government. And so local politicians are handing out goodies more than they're raising taxes. And so they'll continue to hand out more and more goodies, but they end up raising taxes at the end of the day. What you want to do is, and high income tax rates discourage investment and job creation in the state. Those states, and again, you've got 8 states with zero income taxes because they keep their spending low. Florida, Texas, state level. And you've got the other states, the 10 states now that have announced we're going to zero, and here's how we're doing it, step by step. As revenue comes in, we reduce the income tax. So those states compete with Montana and say, invest in my state, build your factory in my state, but put more effort and hire more people in my state. That's driven largely by the high income tax rates in some states, which chase people out of the state, and the low income taxes in others. Every year, our friends at U-Haul put out where do trucks leave from? California, New York. Where do they move to? Florida, Texas, Tennessee. And you can see it's largely driven by how high the income tax is. And so taking that down is the most pro-growth thing that you can do. Now, you want to cut the property tax also so that it's less painful, but in terms of jobs that keep your children in state instead of leaving as soon as they graduate from the university, that's where you want the income taxes lower so that people invest more in states to create more jobs.
Well, and that's very important to Montana. From a demographic standpoint, Montana is the 4th oldest state in the country, and it's people like you and me who are over 65. There's a lot of people over 65 in Montana, and we need to keep our children here, bring new investment here, because eventually, our economy is not going to run on a bunch of us old retired folks. We need to get new blood here into Montana. Let's switch over to what's going on at the national level in regard to income taxes, particularly. I mean, the Trump tax cuts are getting ready to expire at the end of this year, and so how important is that to the country that we get those extended?
If the Trump tax cuts are not extended for another 10 years and frankly permanently, that would be a $5 trillion tax increase in the next 10 years on the American people. So continuing the Trump tax cuts avoids a $5 trillion tax increase. Doubling, it would reduce the amount of money that you make before you pay taxes. It would reduce the per-child tax credit. And if we don't do anything, everybody's tax rate, income tax rate goes to everybody's income tax rate goes up, back to where it was under Obama. If you like the Obama taxes, that's where we're going if we don't make this permanent. So it is very important. I believe the Republicans and Trump have the votes in the House and the Senate to make the present tax policy right now permanent and to add to that several very good pro-growth tax policy, taking the corporate income tax from 21 to 15. Right now, we're barely competitive with China. If we take it down to 15, we have a lower tax than China does. Right now, most of Europe has a lower tax than we do on corporations, counting our state as well as federal ones. Take it down to 15, and we're competitive with more of the countries in Europe. So that's a very important one. Not taxing tips is very important for a whole bunch of different industries, very helpful, something the president has called for. So I think we'll see that pass, and it'll be done in one bill, not two. There was a discussion for a while in Washington, could we do a bill that puts some money into protecting the border and a little money into defense and some energy changes, because that's so easy to do.
Yeah.
And we can't wait for the tax bill. Actually, the tax bill's already written, already been passed once.
Yeah.
You could add a few things to it, but there's not very much to do. Those other three you just mentioned are completely new project lines. Those can be moved quickly, but if you divide them out, it will slow the whole process down because everyone will want to be in the first train leaving the station, not the second train. That will cause delay.
Yeah, and so I know the folks on the left are going to basically always say the Trump tax cut just benefited the wealthy. But, I know the working middle class, if those Trump tax cuts expire, I can't remember the number. It seems like it's like a $1,500 or $2,000 increase for the middle class of people of the United States.
That plus in 2019, when the tax cut was fully in place, the median income family of four saw their income go up 6.8%, because more investment, more jobs, lower taxes. We took the corporate rate down from 35, stupidest, highest in the world, down to 21. Okay, but not that good, but much better than 35. And that got tremendous investment into the economy. Wages went up, more people got hired, and that was very, very helpful. That begins to go away if we don't continue the tax cuts. So even the Washington Post admitted that saying that the Trump tax cuts were only for rich people was nonsense. It just wasn't true. The bulk of those tax cuts were for middle-income people. And also keep in mind that the corporate income tax is not paid by some guy named Mr. General Motors. There is no Mr. General Motors. It's paid by workers in lower wages and fewer jobs. It's paid by consumers when prices go up. And it's paid by retirees if the price of stock goes down because you've so damaged the companies with higher taxes that people's life savings becomes worth less. We pay the corporate income tax. Individuals do. The only reason they have a corporate income tax is it's easy to hide who pays it.
Right, yeah. So before we wrap up here, do you have any final words of wisdom on other issues or tax policy that we should really be focused on in Montana?
I think the good news is that all the red states are taking their taxes down and their individual rates down, their corporate income tax rates down to become much more competitive among the 50 states and with the rest of the world. And that is a huge benefit for the United States. And the other one, of course, is school choice. One of our problems is one of the biggest things our government does. It doesn't do well because it's a monopoly. And you can yell at the public school if you want to, but you can't. You could yell at the post office, and it doesn't make them deliver the mail. Competition improves post offices and education, and that's why school choice, homeschooling, all the various alternatives, charter schools give you competition. People come up with new ideas, and education gets better. We have some of the best high tech in the world because the government doesn't run it.
Yeah.
And we have an education system the government does run. We wonder why it looks like the post office.
Well, I really want to thank you coming out to Montana.
Thank you.
You've talked to a lot of legislators here.
Yes.
And it's really helped them, I think, seeing what's going on across the country in different states. And I know you met with some other groups here in Montana. And so just can't appreciate enough. And don't be a stranger to Montana. You might want to come out in the summertime. It's a little nicer than here in the middle of January.
In a couple of days, I'm heading over to Idaho to meet with the governor and the legislature there. They're also in the business of cutting income taxes.
All right. Thank you very much.